Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of The Gray in Between, where we dive into the stories that live in the shades of gray. I'm your host, Lola, here to explore the fascinating tales from Reddit and beyond, where life complexities come to life. In a world where not everything is black and white, we're here to navigate the in-betweens, offering a fresh perspective, a little advice, and a lot of heart. So sit back, relax, and let's journey through the gray together. One day, I will get that intro without having to look at my notes, and I'll memorize it. But that day is not today, so let's get into story number 1. Okay, a little morbid, but okay. Not really, but a little. I've taken my brother's cemetery plots. They won't know until one of them dies. My mother never shared the details of her will with me or anyone in the family. When she died, we all learned she made me her executor of her will. My 2 brothers were very upset that their little sister, who has an MBA and has a solid family life, was picked over them. Neither of them finished college, and one of them is an invalid who hasn't left his house in years. My mom left her house to the 2 brothers with instructions that I sell the house valued at around $250,000 and divide the money between them. All of her cash was to be divided between the heirs. Her other property was a small vacation home where her and my dead sister's ashes would be scattered. She left it to me and my dead sister's children. 30 or so years earlier, one of the brothers had told her he wanted to build his own cabin, so she deeded him an adjoining lot. Where she died, it was still an empty lot. He convinced one of my nieces to sell him her share of the cabin for $1 and not to tell any one of the heirs before the paperwork was signed. The only way I found out was because he posted on Facebook, "I'm now a proud partial owner of the family's mountain cabin. According to my lawyer, no one can keep me out of it." We aren't friends on Facebook, but some mutual relatives are, and they alerted me to what had happened. In the state that we live in, even if fractional ownership allows the partial owners to enter the property anytime without restrictions. There were some very ugly emails between him and my niece when she tried to get the property back. And she admitted he did it out of spite to hurt me and make sure my family and I didn't get to enjoy the property. Brother number 2 had emailed my niece several times and told her he was so proud of her for selling to her uncle and he'd never seen his brother so happy. Mom's will was written so that the estate would retain ownership of all property, including real estate, until the probate process was completed. My brother didn't understand that and thought he would have immediate ownership. His lawyer didn't read the will very well and thought the same thing. The only way to get the share of the cabin away from him was for my niece to refuse her shares of the inheritance. Even with that, it cost the $600,000 estate, including the house she left to them, roughly $30,000 in attorney fees to fight this. But we won and the cabin is safe. I don't know how much he had to pay his lawyers, but it was a lot of money. The situation drug on for months. The property my mom had given him sits directly across from the cabin. Out of spite and anger, he clear-cut the property mom had given him and brought in over 100 tons of gravel, so the wooded area now looks like a gravel parking lot. This is directly next to the place where mom and sister's ashes are scattered. My brothers had asked for the 3 burial spots next to my dad. They adored and idolized him. My mom is scattered at the cabin and she won't be using them. So I gave them the cemetery plot paperwork. But before probate ended, I had the plots put in my name and they are now legally mine. The paperwork they have is worthless, but they don't know it. I didn't tell my brothers and they won't find out until one of them dies and they can't be buried next to my dad. Honestly, I know dad wouldn't have approved of what they did. He loved mom and he would be upset her ashes are scattered next to a gravel covered lot, not the woods she loved. I haven't told them what I've done. Screw them. They wasted money from her estate and made mom's resting place look horrible. They don't deserve to be buried next to my dad. Oh man, I've never thought of it because I'm not like a real mom yet, but like I can't imagine fighting my siblings for money from my parents or things like that when someone passes away. That's a real thing too. Like you don't think about those things until it happens to you. Money is like the root of all evil. And so in these types of situations, I can see why your mom left it to you, but that still sucks. I would hate to like fight my brothers and go to court and waste all this money for what? Someone has a comment and I like this, it's actually really smart, and it says, "My mother has a clause in her estate that if any sibling disputed the will, they were excluded from the will." And I thought this was brilliant. That is so smart. Am I wrong for not buying my fiance a second wedding dress that's more than 50% of the total budget? My 49 female, fiance 32 female, wants me to buy her a new wedding dress that's over 50% the total wedding budget after I already bought her a $8,600 dress. My God. Oh my God. That's a lot of money for a dress. I'm marrying the love of my life who is a member of a Native American tribe and lives on a reservation in my city. I was involved with this tribe before I met her, buying an older woman a mobile home to put on her land when her daughter went to prison, leaving her 3 grandkids to raise when she was living in a 15-foot travel trailer. She managed to get the kids out of foster care due to this. This greased the wheels to get the council to approve us having our wedding on the reservation. I'm paying for everything and have a $60,000 budget. There will be traditional dancers, drummers, and a traditional feast, all catered by women on the reservation. We have an 80-person guest list. The only people coming on my side is my mother and my adult nephew. Okay, whoa, $60,000 for how many people? Shoot, 80 people? Ah, that's $750 per person. What the fudge? Yes, I'm spending my money around on the reservation, trying not to be obnoxious about it. Like I've said, I've seen the poverty many of them go through, and I love that my wedding is bringing money there. My fiancé said she dreamed of her wedding since she was a little girl. I could care less about weddings, to be honest, so I've let her be the only bride. I'm going to wear a black gown with tuxedo elements on top to kind of stand in as a groom. This way, all of the attention will be on her. My only rule was that the budget was $60,000 firm, not a penny more. And I hired a wedding planner she had to work with to get everything within that budget. Okay, if you gave me I'm Afghan, you guys know this. People who are kind of look like me, Central Asian, South Asian, whatever, Middle Eastern, I've never been to an 80-person wedding. And if it was an 80-person wedding, $60,000 is more than enough. That is, she wants a $30,000 dress? What? She went out with her girlfriends and decided on a beautiful $8,600 dress. She loved it. It was purchased and fitted great. It's 3 months until the wedding. We're doing November because it's way too hot to have a summer wedding out here. She was continuing to get things ready with the tribe and the planner. One of the tribal elders brought up her dress. He said she should wear a traditional tribal gown made by one of their artisans. She sat me down to tell me something serious and explained that she couldn't wear the gown she bought. She needed a traditional tribal gown. I said to get a quote from the artisan and maybe we could get a partial return and or sell the other gown to cover it. The artisan's price was $33,000. It's going to be covered with beadwork and she needs to get started now. I said, well, it's a good thing we already have a gown. She said she would not humiliate herself and dishonor her tribe by wearing the wrong gown. I said I can't approve this cost. It would throw the budget out of the window. She says I have millions of dollars and this is our wedding and I'm being ridiculous. Yes, I have money. I live off 4% as someone semi-retired. I have this money because I keep to the budgets I set. Now she's not talking to me except to remind me every day that if the artisan doesn't start now, she won't have a dress. I don't know what to do. Am I being the asshole here? There's a little edit because she says, I've noticed some confusion and just wanted to clear something up. The elder isn't saying she's required to wear the dress. There have been other weddings with non-traditional dresses like her mother's wedding. The elder just suggested that since this is planning out to be such a big event for the tribe, it would be appropriate for her to wear a traditional dress. This is part of why I'm saying that it's still an option for her to wear the original dress. Okay, I think you've been very generous, but I think a little bit at this point, the tribe is kind of seeing you as a cash cow because $33,000 is bonkers. Bonkers. Who is this artisan? Get other artisan quotes. Why are you going for this one specific person who wants to tell you, of course, you should buy this dress. I make these dresses and I'll give it to you for an absurd amount of money. Not a coincidence. I already think $60,000 is over the top for an 80-person wedding. Not the point. You can afford it. I get it. But $33,000 for a dress that you're going to wear once is ludicrous. Absolutely ludicrous. My husband is having an affair and I pretend not to know. I'll start by saying this. My husband is a great husband. He's kind, he's a wonderful father, and he does more than his fair share of the housework. He makes good money and treats me well. We have a great lifestyle and we've been married for 15 years with ups and downs, but my friends constantly tell me how lucky I am to have him. Please don't try to validate cheating at all, ever. A couple of months ago, I borrowed his phone and saw some text. There were some explicit messages, mostly just random conversations with another woman. They've talked about times they've met up, so it's a physical affair, not just an emotional one. They say I love you to each other. He talks about parenting stuff, like apologizing for being quiet because he was busy taking care of our son, and more specific stuff about parenting troubles. He's mentioned me, so she knows I exist, but I didn't see him mention me much. I found her on Instagram. She's young, pretty, successful. We're in our 40s and she looks like she can't be older than 30. I was shocked when I found out, but the more I've thought about it, I've decided to say nothing. If I confront him, then our lives will completely change. Our son's life will change. I don't know how he'd react if he deny or end it or leave me and run off with her. I mean, he told her he loves her. We have such a nice, stable home life. I don't want to lose that. It hurts when I see him texting on his phone and when he's late from work or when he makes an excuse to disappear for a night. But does it hurt more than losing this life we have would? I don't want my son to grow up spending his time between two households. I don't want to be single and have to find someone new. Maybe I'll change my mind later, but for now, I'll keep saying nothing. Just to know, my husband has had a vasectomy for all of those worried about her getting pregnant. Also, I have been STD tested. I got a test after I first found out and nothing came up. I work part-time, but my husband makes far, far more than me. We keep our finances fairly separate. He pays the majority of the bills. We do not live in America. I am not an expert on divorce law in our country. I do not know what I would be entitled to in a divorce. Yes, I know I should look into it. I have saved a small amount of evidence, just some pictures on his phone. And our son is 9. And no, I don't want our son growing up thinking this is normal. I also don't want him to grow up without having both his parents fully present in his life. I'm scared of the possibility my husband will come home one day and ask for a divorce. Even if you do stay married to him, you will have to prepare yourself for divorce because you're even saying like, if I don't leave him now, he's gonna maybe one day come home eventually leaving me. I cannot live in a situation where I don't know like what's gonna happen in my life. If you know like for the shoe to drop, like, oh, is he gonna come home today? Like you're gonna be so skeptical all the time. And it makes me so sad when I read stories like this, because trust me, I know how much people are gonna bash her and all this stuff, but I understand. I understand why you want to stay, right? Especially being women, we're so emotional. That's the father of your child. That's your husband. You've been married for so long. And just the idea of starting over at the age that you are, not think that's impossible, but I get where you're just very reluctant to do it, which sucks because I think men know that too. It's like, if I cheat, what is she going to do? Said this before, but that's why I think it's so important to have like the financial independence and like having a system behind you, a unit behind you that will have your back no matter what, and sometimes the egg may look good on the outside, but you open it and it's rotten and it sucks. It sucks. I hate this so much for you. And like, may we all be protected from something like this. And I hope one day you will want more for yourself. That's what I say. It's like, I hope one day you want more for yourself. And I do think you're being a bit naive and you are assuming it's you that will end the marriage and he could blindside you wanting a divorce. What if one day he just comes home and is like, I just want to be together with her? Get your ducks in a row now. Plan and control the timing of your divorce and as much else as you can in your favor. Because the worst thing that can happen to you is be blindsided by it. And then you have to pick up and do what? One day he comes home like, get out of my house. My new girlfriend's moving in. Then what? Am I wrong for telling my daughter that I won't budge even if she never speaks to me again? My daughter Casey, 17 female, worked and saved up money for around a year to be able to afford a better car than we would buy her with our family budget. My older daughter Alana, 16 female, has ADHD. Recently got her driver's license and asked to drive Casey's car. Casey allowed it, but Alana ended up having a bad accident around 6 months ago, which basically rendered the car unusable. The insurance payout wasn't nearly enough to cover the replacement, and with Alana's medical bills from the accident, thankfully there was no permanent damage, just a broken arm and leg. There was no way we could afford to replace Casey's car immediately. Alana was very apologetic to Casey, and so were we since we couldn't afford to replace her car. Casey didn't accept our apology and has been basically avoiding us, skipping family dinners and pretty much pretending that her mom, Alana, and I don't exist and only talks to us if she needs a form signed for her school. I begged her to come to a family therapy session and she eventually relented, but with the condition that Alana wouldn't be present. In the therapy session, she told us that she won't be resuming a relationship with us until we replace her car, which realistically won't be until next year. When the therapist asked how she expected us to do that, Casey said we could just make Alana work to earn the money. The issue is that Alana has severe ADHD and already has trouble managing her schoolwork. I'm worried that making her work to earn her money will harm her grades and have significant ramifications for her future. Casey said, well, she should have thought about that before destroying my car. I don't care. I'm not going to speak to any of you unless I have my car replaced. I responded that she was free to avoid speaking to me for as long as she wanted, but I'm not going to permanently harm her sister's future to get her a car earlier. My wife agrees with me that we need to stand firm on our position, but is also genuinely afraid of Casey never speaking to her ever again. I understand that her car was ruined, but I as a parent need to look out for all of my children, not just one. I also don't want to set that precedent that emotional blackmail will ever work if what you're asking for is unreasonable. So, am I the asshole? Yeah. Sorry. 1000%. I'm like at a loss for words. 1000% you're wrong. I'm looking at this from Casey's perspective, okay? She worked hard for something valuable to her and it was taken away due to an accident that had nothing to do with her involving her sister. She's understandably hurt and frustrated. And not just because of the car, but also because she feels like her hard work was for nothing. And her anger may also be amplified by the fact that the accident was avoidable, even though it may not have been intentional. And especially for a teenager, the car symbolizes much more than transportation. It's like her independence, achievement, and like in fairness, like I'd be like, yeah, I worked hard for that car. That's a sense of like, you're proud about it. Like I did this by myself. I think Casey feels that there has not been enough accountability or consequences for Alana's actions, which is leading her to this very strong emotional reaction. Alana made a mistake. Mistakes happen. It doesn't negate the fact that she's also responsible for said consequences. However, sorry, I'm like taking a break. The argument that her schoolwork would suffer if she worked isn't necessarily a strong justification for her not contributing in some way to fixing the situation. ADHD is for sure a challenge, but many people with ADHD successfully balance school and part-time jobs. You can't use this as a weakness against her, then she shouldn't have been driving if you were that concerned about her ADHD. No, Alana needs to get a job. If it wasn't her sister, what would you have done? You're getting some grace because it is your other daughter. But if it was someone else's car she crashed, you'd have had to pay it out. On principle, right? I think Casey would have had a different reaction if you guys all weren't so on Casey's side. I mean, Alana's side, like I know she would have had more grace for her sister, but as long as someone like, hey, promise we're going to pay you back, but we're going to get this back to you sooner than a year, then she would have been okay. But the fact that you guys are making excuses for Alana would piss me off too. Work. All right, you guys, this is the last story for today's episode, my favorite time of the day, and it's the Viewer's Corner, where you guys send me your real life stories and ask for advice. So this one is titled, Am I Wrong for Not Wanting to Have a Relationship with My Sister-in-Law? Just a few details before I get to the main story. I went to high school with my sister-in-law, but she was a year ahead of me. We had one class together. I always thought that she was really pretty, but she had the worst attitude towards teachers and always getting into fights. So I always kept my distance. Moving a few years forward, she showed up at my in-laws' house. We had one mutual friend and I was not aware he was even friends with her. Well, she started dating my brother-in-law and we became really good friends. We all went on double dates and did many activities together. Her and I would go to Zumba at the park and we had dinners together often, celebrated many birthdays together with family, etc. Then my brother-in-law proposed to her. All of us were super ecstatic. Mind you, all of my husband's brothers had girlfriends and wives. There are 4 brothers, including my husband, and we all had such an amazing group relationship. She has a big family full of sisters and half-sisters, which she treats like garbage because some of them are single moms or didn't finish school but have great jobs. Well, she told me that she wanted all of her bridesmaids to go on a cruise because she knew we were all moms and wanted us to have fun. The cruise was a nightmare. During this time, I was going through a dark time. My depression was into high gear and my anxiety was all over the place. But I acted like nothing was wrong because I didn't want to ruin her bachelorette. She was sick the whole time. This was in November 2019, right around the beginning of COVID. Little by little, we were all starting to get sick. She was upset that one of her sisters and I separated from the group to take pictures with birds. We were having fun. Apparently, she had an issue with that. Anyway, fast forward to her wedding day. Also on my in-laws' anniversary wedding day, a week before Christmas, which is a busy time for me at work. I'm a hairstylist. In the morning, while everyone was getting their hair done in her suite, I was in my room getting ready and doing my daughter's, mother-in-law, and another member of the family. I received a call from my cousin in Guatemala, letting me know that my grandmother, who raised me until I moved to the US, had passed away. I started crying because she was my grandmother. Also, I was the one who had to tell my dad that his mom had passed away. I called my husband and told him what was happening. He gave me the option if I wanted to just go home, which I regret now, but I stayed because again, I didn't want to ruin her day. The wedding happened and then the party. I left the party an hour before the event was over. My husband and other family members can confirm this. Well, COVID hit and I didn't see the family until spring. When I saw her, I just didn't want to talk to her because I was angry, which made the family wonder why I wasn't talking to her. So I texted her and I said we should talk and clear the air. We met for lunch and let me tell you, she blamed me for everything that went wrong at her wedding. That I had been a terrible friend and how dare I leave the wedding early. People had told her I left in the middle of the party. I mentioned to her that I didn't appreciate how she had been treating me and the fact that she called me a maid. Where did she call her maid? Where did she say maid? She said, well, maid is the word for bridesmaid. LOL, I was starting to get angry, but I kept my cool because I didn't want to start crying. Then I mentioned to her that I left early because my grandmother had passed away. This is why I was so angry at her. She said, well, it's too bad that it will be the only thing you'll remember on my wedding day. Is that the reason why your parents didn't show up to my wedding? I don't remember anything that happened after that. I started crying and somehow ended up at my parents'. How can someone say that? I now can't stand to see her or be in the same place as her. I'm polite to her because of my mother-in-law. And after spending over $4,000 on her wedding, even though my husband and I make enough to live comfortably and provide for our daughter, it was a lot of money. I know I will never get an apology from her because she's perfect and can't do no wrong. So, am I the asshole? Well, you kind of left the part where she called you a maid, so I can't take that into consideration. But what I can take into consideration is that if my I don't care, if you're at my wedding, my close friend, whatever, and you have a death like that, doesn't matter what it is. If you're my friend, if you could stay, you would stay, and I know that. But if you told me you had to go, I would trust that you had to go. I'm not going to question your judgment or question your love for me. You know what I mean? But that's how my friends are. If you're insecure in your relationship with your friends, and that can project that the way it did, but I would just make sure, of course, go. Let me know if you need anything. Be safe. I hope you're okay. Be there for my friend. Yes, weddings are great and all of that, but I think real friendships show in the hard times too. And you should have listened to your initial instinct of her of not being friends with people like that. Just always listen to your gut. And it's your brother's wife, so your brother-in-law's wife, so it's even farther away. You don't have to see her all the time. And even when you do, you're very cordial, very respectful. Hey, how are you? Yada 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 yada. You don't have to have a relationship with everyone in your husband's family. And then her comment, that's such a self-conceited comment. You went through such a major loss on her wedding day, and even though you had every reason to excuse yourself, you stayed to avoid causing disruption, and that shows a lot of consideration on your part. 4K is crazy for a guest. Crazy. What the hell did you buy? $4,000 is crazy. I didn't even spend that much on my sister's wedding as being the sister of the bride, or one of my best friend's wedding. I'm gonna try to play both sides of it. So from your friend, the sister-in-law's perspective, she was probably whatever. I actually can't justify her. You were grown adults. Life happens. Shit happens. Her reaction to your grandmother's passing and her like dismissive and hurtful comments is like very callous and like lacking empathy. And she showed very little understanding, compassion to your grief. And the hell sense of entitlement and disregard for your feelings, calling you a maid, even though I want to know more details on that. Lack of respect between your relationship. Why would anyone force this is me. You cannot force me to do something I don't want to do. And that also includes having relationships with people. Protect your peace. That's the only thing you can do is control yourself. All right. Oh, I'm tired. I'm tired, guys. But thank you so much for watching this episode of The Gray in Between. Thanks for joining me on this episode. And if you have a story that you want to share or a dilemma you'd like me to weigh in on, don't hesitate to reach out. Remember, life isn't always black and white. There's beauty in the gray. Until next time, stay curious, stay kind, and keep exploring in-betweens. Bye.